We are in the midst of spring, and what do people typically do during this season? Spring cleaning, of course. But for some of us, cleaning is less about sweeping and dusting, while instead more about accomplishing smaller tasks, like cleaning out your backlog of games. We all got them, even if they're not all equal in size, so today, I wanted to take a minute and talk about some of the games I've been playing over the last month or so lately, and give my 2 cents on them. This isn't me giving a review for any of these games, of course, just myself shining a light on some games that might not be necessarily leading conversations on message boards. First up is Final Fantasy II. This is a game that, in terms of its original version, Final Fantasy II is often overlooked when it comes to the greater franchise, and that tends to be for a good reason. The story goes that Final Fantasy II was developed and released within 1 year of its previous entry. As a result, even with the new ideas that the team had, there were many shortcuts used to extend playtime that players would just have to trial and error their way across as they stumbled about the game back in 1988. Look up any deep dive video on the game, and folks will tell you all about how there's dungeons with many rooms that are empty dead ends, and that's putting it nicely. EXP is given to you scarcely, and there's an entire keyword system that you need to navigate in order to progress the main story. However, later versions have scaled back on some of that tedium that the game has always suffered from. And, in the Pixel Remaster specifically, you have not only quality of life enhancements like the ability to fast forward combat, or the ever-present minimap for both the game's overworld and its dungeons, but now we have the ability to do things like turn enemy encounters on and off, as well as the ability to manually adjust EXP multipliers for weapon classes, spells, and so forth. This makes the overall game significantly less frustrating to play for people like myself who want to see what it has to offer without needing to invest about 60 hours give or take to get through it all. And that's not accounting for lost progress from losing in battle in the traditional sense where you can only go as far back as your previous save. Now, not only do you have autosave getting applied to you constantly, but even if you were to turn off all the multipliers and play the game straight, it's still comically easy to die, especially early on. Like seriously, my first play session with the game, I had been using the multipliers in order to get my characters competent enough to be able to navigate the early portions of the game without common enemies wiping my team, and even with that, exploring just a little off the beaten path near the starting town, making my way towards the second one, I found myself getting overwhelmed and my party entirely wiped out in 2 turns by a swarm of enemies significantly higher level than me. It was nuts. It at least goes to show that even with turning on and fully utilizing all these features, the game isn't a cakewalk either way, which is a similar feeling I had to Final Fantasy I a couple months ago. The core difficulty to the game is still there, the pacing of it has just been sped up, and I'm all here for that with some of these NES-era RPGs. Moving right along, the next game on my list here is Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness. This is a game that many, myself included, have been hoping to see return in some way, as since its release on the GameCube, hadn't been acknowledged by its creators in a meaningful way. Fortunately, when it was revealed GameCube games would be coming to the Switch too via its expanded online subscription, everyone collectively knows its box art in that trailer being featured prominently alongside other noteworthy titles. Gale of Darkness was shadow dropped one night at 9 PM my local time, and I can kinda understand why this game isn't acknowledged much now. Don't get me wrong, at its core, it's a 3D Pokemon game, like Pokemon Colosseum, and that's not a bad game to have on your hands. But with that said, I do think a remaster is necessary for this one to add some minor quality of life improvements that I'm shocked aren't in the original release. Namely, this game needs a feature to speed up the combat. It's already a game with a slow start that doesn't let you battle much right away, as it has you running around talking to NPCs for a bit longer than necessary before opening up, and then when you do finally enter combat, you have to sit through every animation of every character in a turn-based game at its default speed the entire time. Like, forget speeding up the combat, you outright cannot turn off the animations like you can in mainline games that were also out at the same time. And that makes me very sad to say, as I've always been super curious about Gale of Darkness. So to see it's a game you put a movie on in the background while you play in order to stay engaged in order to get through the whole thing, it's just a shame. It's hard to mess up Pokemon, but this is absolutely a game that you play when you either don't have options, like you're on a plane ride, or while you're at home and have a means to multitask while playing it. Up next for a bit of whiplash is the Resident Evil 3 remake. I had been revisiting this game a lot lately with my friend Zach, who you may have seen on this channel before, and he wanted to do a race together down the line. However, this wasn't my first time jumping into the shoes of Jill as she explores Raccoon City. I'd gotten this game at launch during the early days of the pandemic, and was initially left in a so-so stance by the time the credits were rolling. The game itself was fantastic, and surprisingly one of my most revisited in the franchise, Alas, unlike the remake of Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3 Remake took some liberties with how to remake its source material. How many times did I say remake there? Ugh. The most egregious change of which is a handful of sequences and areas from the original Resident Evil 3 that have been removed and instead replaced with an entirely new boss fight, which didn't really impress many people. Personally, my biggest grumble was that the remake of its predecessor had spoiled us with extra modes that had non-canonical stories that felt like a nice way to mix things up, only for this one to have none of that. Instead, we were given an online-only multiplayer mode that had ended its official support within a few months of release. There's plenty of other things to mention, but to name all of them can feel a bit nitpicky. I feel, had it only been one or two of these tweaks, folks would have still grumbled, but not to the extent that was seen when the game first came out. Despite that, the game's short runtime and solid gameplay makes for a surprisingly fun way to encourage multiple playthroughs. While I do wish there was something like alternative endings if you played the game fast enough, beyond the in-game challenges that give you some post-game unlockables such as more inventory space or infinite ammo, the way you can navigate the environments from point A to B while dodging and shooting your way through can make for a fun way to kill an hour and some change. Even now, after 7 full runs of the game across all versions, I'm still finding ways to shave a little bit of time off my best records. I should have another video or two on Resident Evil 3 Remake in the future, so look forward to that when that happens. Back to something more colorful, my next game is the Switch 2 edition of Breath of the Wild. Among its many incarnations, Breath of the Wild and its follow-ups have been in a weird place in my brain. Throughout the bulk of the Switch 1's lifespan, outside of Age of Calamity, Breath of the Wild wasn't a Zelda game that clicked with me right away. In fact, it wasn't until Tears of the Kingdom was close to coming out that I even bothered to finish it for the first time. Thankfully, as time has gone on, I've softened up to it a bit over the years. Though, early game does leave me in positions of extended frustration due to the lack of resources that come with playing naturally for an extended period of time. Overall, the Switch 2 edition mostly provides simple performance updates, but for someone like myself who never bought the original in any shape, this gives me the perfect excuse to pick up a physical copy on my own. As anyone who owns the physical cartridge of a Switch 2 edition for any first-party Nintendo game so far, they're compatible with the Switch 1. Just don't pop it into the Switch 1 expecting the performance boost or gameplay additions that come with the Switch 2 version specifically. The cartridge will load what the Switch 1 was meant to have all along. Currently, I'm unsure if I'm going to commit to finishing the playthrough I'm doing, but it was a nice way to spend my afternoon on Easter Sunday. Lastly for this list is one that I had folks recommend to me in the background, and that's Natsu-Mon, 20th Century Summer Kid. It's an open-world adventure game where you play as Satoru, the son of a traveling ringmaster who's gotten the chance to spend time in the town of Yogami at his own leisure. By extension, so do you, as you spend in-game days doing the most with your time as you see fit. Do you spend the day solving mysteries with the kids running the local detective agency? Or do you spend time fishing? Do you attend the morning exercise at the shrine with everyone else at the island? Or do you prefer playing tag with the joyful spirit child? Time is your most important resource, and depending on how you decide to spend your days in town, you'll experience certain events you would otherwise easily miss. It's impossible to do everything in one playthrough, so you're encouraged to do multiple runs to see what you may have missed the first or second time around. There's even an extra island you can explore with its own handful of characters to be found in the Broadcast Over Sunset DLC. None of that is to say time is your only resource either. You can earn money from selling fish, finding it on rooftops, or fulfilling quests. As you do this, you can unlock various toys to interact with, or simply use it to get more bait for your fishing equipment. It's a cozy game to sit through, and I very much recommend this for anyone who needs a game that won't ask for too much of their time, and among all these games I'm currently playing, this is probably the one I'm looking forward to playing again the most. And as one final by the way for Natsu-Mon, say the game speed isn't quite to your liking, you can speed up or slow down the flow of time in the settings if its default speed doesn't do it for you. That's gonna do it for today's episode, and I hope you enjoyed it. If this video might have given you a new recommendation or two, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what some of you guys think about these games as well. And as the familiar saying goes, I'll see you in the next video. Till then, everybody.